Okay, questions. We'll have about 5-10 minutes quickly.
The corporate operation ends, like if we can take for example the Marikana issue, because like there is a saying like the corporation companies are the one who are oppressing people and they were low wages and they were slaves.
Yeah.
Did it end if like I may see Marikana seemingly
Yeah, no, look, the mining, we need to talk, and I don't know if you're going to have a session on this. Mining labor, they was absolutely, in the beginning, by the way, in the beginning, the miners, the potential miners, when they needed the labor, the people from the countryside actually could dominate the terms, because they knew that the people they sent out to come and recruit labor were in need of them. So for the first phase of labor recruitment, to go to the mines, the terms were very much on the side of the people in the countryside, because we don't need this, and when they go, they would run away, or they could set the terms. But later on, as the years went on, the terms went into the favor of the mining companies. The mining companies employed intermediary companies to do the recruiting. But in the first phase, so we must look at it in phases, where it's first in it's the stronger party, or the people in the countryside who are coming, and they and then later on there's new and other legislation controlling it, and it becomes harder and more difficult, and then ultimately you have the system of the mining compounds, strict regimentation, division into so-called tribal groupings, and so on, and the weakening of the countryside and growing dependency of the countryside on the mine remittances and so on. So it's a very complicated and long story, but it goes through various phases. What is different is the level of unionization later on, and that is able to bargain on behalf of miners, and after basically the alliance of COSATU with the ANC and so on, and the Union of Mine Workers, the NUM, disgruntlement amongst the workers that the union is actually not doing things in our interest, and then you have the emergence of AMCU. But South Africa is still an economy which is very largely dependent on mining, on gold, platinum, and so on. We've grown our industries and so on, relative to other parts of the continent, but mining is still a massively important part of the economy, and still employs huge numbers of people.
Okay. My question is around those three C's that you mentioned: the commerce, civilization, and Christianity.
Yeah.
My question is that, as you say, they were colonizing. They used like Christianity in terms of trying to colonize people in their mind or stuff. Was there like any kind of religion before, or they imposed that and then people followed that and created their own chicken or stuff?
Yeah.
Or what were they following before?
Yeah.
That
That's a very interesting question. As you heard, there were Christians in Ethiopia, but Ethiopia was and Addis Ababa, Abyssinia. There were local religions, local customs, traditions, local forms of worship. They sent in missionaries. There's so much written about this now. Often what you try to do is you get people who are outcasts, and you make alliances and you convert them, and there are quite some nice books about it also, and some funny novels. Things Fall Apart is a novel about the growth of the colonial settlement, some aspects of the pre-colonial religion and practices and so on. There are other novels about this. So you develop the various strategies by various missionary groupings to bring in outcasts, for instance, people who are left out of the society, to make strategic conversions and so on. That's one thing I can say. The British are particularly keen on using the missionaries, paying some of the costs. On the other hand, forcing the missionaries to cover other areas of costs. For instance, in the southern Sudan, they basically divide up the south of the Sudan amongst a couple of missionary groups, 6 groups, and say, just do what you like. And the missionaries were actually not very well provided for. But the missionaries were able to build schools. Schooling is an important avenue. And sometimes they do important work in providing the conditions for the first generation of African nationalists, because they create they teach reading, writing skills, and then later on the very people who go through these skills turn around and use it against the colonial order. Some of them are very conservative. The French are less keen on the missionaries because the French is a secular, very strongly secular state. So they they claim not to make an alliance with the missionaries to further the. And so what happens in the French West African territories, you also find a massive strengthening and expansion of Islam, because they see that at least the elites are Muslim, and it's important to keep them happy. And the elites use that to further strengthen. It's a very curious relationship with Islam in places like Senegal, Mauritania, Mali, and so on. Some alliance and some open battle, because there's claims called for jihad against them and so on. And they overreact a lot, the French, against any whiff of what they see is going to be a potential uprising, Muslim uprising against them, because they have experience in Algeria. So then they come to sub-Saharan Africa, they come with this model of these people who are going to resist us all the time. So they engage with the locals with a preset model of react. So, I mean, I can go into lots of stories for you about how they overreact to certain things. But it also, the spread of the French and modern technology creates conditions for other sorts of movements. The brotherhoods, the Muslim brotherhoods, spread massively during this period in their territory, with minimal presence of missionaries. Christian missionaries go, Catholic missionaries go into West Africa. They're successful in parts in places like Cote d'Ivoire, and in Belgian Congo, so there's strong Catholic presence. So in the French territories largely, you'll have Catholic presence. In the former British territories, not so much Catholic, but Anglican and other non-Catholic Protestant orders and so on. But the local traditions, local religions, that also people are opportunistic, both amongst the Muslims or people who claim to be Muslims and amongst those who claim to be Christians. They often do it for a materialistic or for short-term gain, and they still practice local religion. So, and they combine the two. And so, if we talk about resistance later on, there are resistance movements that are quote unquote syncretic. They combine the two. So they use biblical, verses, the coming of Christ and so on. But it's us coming and returning. Yeah. So we find this in South Africa also. So there's a Zionist church. The big Zionist church. Yeah. So there's a lot of this, and in the early phases of resistance, it often takes this mixture of Christianity and local African religion, and a reworking of it to push back the powers that be.